Women are not chasing men who give more. They are chasing men who give less of one specific thing. And if you don't understand this, you will keep doing everything right and still get ignored. Look at what's happening. You see one man putting in effort. He's texting first, checking in, replying fast, always available, always showing interest. On paper, he's doing everything correctly, but he's the one being overlooked. Then you see another man. He's not trying so hard. He's not constantly texting. He's not rushing to reply. He's not over-explaining himself. Yet somehow, she is the one calling him more. Texting first, trying to get his attention. That difference is not random. It comes down to one thing, attention. More specifically, free attention. Most men give their attention away too easily. They make themselves available without limit. They respond instantly. They overengage. They try to maintain constant communication, thinking it will build attraction. It doesn't. It reduces it. Because when something is always available, it stops feeling valuable. When your time, your focus, and your energy are easy to access, they lose weight. There is nothing to earn, nothing to work toward, nothing to invest in. Now understand this clearly. This is not about ignoring her. This is about control. A man who controls his attention controls the dynamic. He doesn't react out of fear of losing her. He doesn't overextend himself to keep her interested. He gives attention, but only when it makes sense. Not every time it is demanded. That creates a different experience. Now she feels the gap. Now she notices the difference. Now she starts thinking because what is not easily available becomes more interesting, and what becomes more interesting gets more attention. So before anything else, ask yourself one question. Are you giving your attention freely or are you making it valuable? Because that answer explains everything. Also, before we go deeper, drop where you're watching from in the comments. Attention is not just something you give. It is something you spend. And like anything that has value, the moment you give too much of it away for free, it loses its impact. This is where most men get it wrong. They treat attention like it's unlimited, like it costs nothing. Like the more they give, the more they will be appreciated. So they respond instantly. They stay available all day. They keep conversations alive even when the energy is low. And they think that consistency of attention will create attraction. It doesn't. It creates familiarity without value. Now understand this clearly. Familiarity without value leads to being taken for granted. Because if she knows she can get your attention anytime she wants without effort, without investment, without earning it, then there is no reason for her to move toward you. There is no tension, no curiosity, no space for her to think about you. Everything is already given. That removes the need to invest. Another thing you need to see is this. When you give attention freely, you also give away your position. You stop being someone she is trying to understand, and you become someone she already has access to. There is no mystery, no anticipation, no reason for her to reach out first. You are always there. And when you are always there, you are no longer exciting. Now compare that to a man who controls his attention. He responds when it makes sense for him, not out of pressure. He engages when the energy is there, not when he is trying to force it. He does not overextend himself just to keep something going. That creates balance because now attention is not automatic. It is intentional, and when something is intentional, it carries weight. So the reframe is simple. Stop thinking of attention as something you should give more of. Start seeing it as something that should be managed, because once you understand that attention is a currency, you stop spending it everywhere. And when you stop spending it everywhere, its value increases. And that is when the dynamic begins to change. This is where it shows up first. Texting. Most men treat texting like a race. The moment her message comes in, they respond immediately. It doesn't matter what they are doing. It doesn't matter if the message is dry. It doesn't matter if there is no real effort on her side. They reply fast because they don't want to lose momentum. That is free attention. It signals that your time is always open. It signals that her message automatically becomes your priority. And once that pattern is established, it becomes expected. Now she doesn't have to think about reaching out. She already knows you'll be there. Another problem is how men handle low-effort messages. She sends LOL, okay, or one-word replies, and instead of matching the energy, they increase theirs. They ask more questions. They try to carry the conversation. They try to keep it alive. That is overinvestment. And it communicates one thing clearly. You are more interested than she is. Now understand this. When you invest more than the other person consistently, you shift the balance. The conversation stops being mutual. It becomes one-sided. And once it becomes one-sided, the value drops because there is no challenge. Now compare that to a man who controls his attention. He does not respond instantly every time. If he is busy, he replies later, not to play games, but because his life does not stop for a message. That alone changes the dynamic. She notices that you are not always available. That creates space, and space creates curiosity. Another thing he does is match effort. If the conversation is low energy, he does not force it. He does not reward low effort with high effort. If she is not investing, he pulls back. Now something shifts. She feels the drop in attention. And when attention drops, interest can increase because now she has to step forward. So the point is simple. How you handle small moments like texting shows everything about your position. If your attention is automatic, it loses value. If your attention is controlled, it becomes something she notices. And that is what changes how she responds to you. This is where most men expose themselves without realizing it. You're having a conversation and her energy is low. Short replies, no real effort, no curiosity, no engagement. Instead of reading the situation, most men panic. They start asking more questions, adding more detail, trying to revive the interaction. They carry the conversation alone. That is free attention. It shows that you are willing to do all the work just to keep her there. It shows that her effort doesn't matter because you will compensate for it anyway. And once that becomes the pattern, she has no reason to invest. Why would she? The conversation is already being handled. Now understand this clearly. Attraction is not built when one person does everything. It is built when both people participate. If you remove her need to participate, you remove her need to engage. And when engagement drops, interest drops with it. Another thing that happens is this. When you keep pushing energy into a low-fort conversation, you signal desperation, not in an obvious way, but in a subtle one. You are trying to hold her attention instead of letting her choose to give it. That is the shift. Now compare that to a man who controls his attention. If the energy is low, he does not try to fix it. He doesn't force questions. He doesn't stretch the conversation. He allows it to slow down naturally. If there is no effort from her side, he reduces his. That creates contrast. Now she feels the silence. She notices the drop. And instead of being passively entertained, she has to decide whether she wants to continue or not. That puts responsibility back on her. And when responsibility is there, investment follows. So the point is simple. Do not reward low effort with high energy. Do not carry conversations that are not mutual, because the moment you start doing that, you train her to give less while you give more. And that is how interest disappears. Control your attention, match her effort, and let the conversation reveal where she stands. This is where most men blend in without realizing it. She posts a picture. Within minutes, there are comments, likes, reactions, and messages. You're beautiful. Wow. Stunning. Gorgeous. It's the same pattern repeated over and over by different men. And then you join them. You add your own comment. You react quickly. You try to stand out by saying something slightly different, but it still falls into the same category. That is free attention. You are giving validation in a space where validation is already overflowing. You are competing in a crowded environment where your input does not carry weight because it looks like everyone else's. Now understand this clearly. If she can get the same reaction from 100 other men instantly, your reaction has no value. It is not memorable. It is not unique. It does not make her think about you. It makes you part of the crowd. And when you are part of the crowd, you are replaceable. Another thing that happens is this. By reacting immediately every time you make your attention predictable, she knows you will show up. She knows you will respond. There's no surprise, no delay, no curiosity. Everything is expected, and expected attention is ignored over time. Now compare that to a man who controls his attention. He does not rush to react. He does not feel the need to validate publicly every time she posts something. He is not trying to compete with other men for visibility. He stays selective. He engages when it is meaningful, not when it is convenient. That creates difference. Now she notices something unusual. You are not behaving like everyone else. You are not reacting automatically. And that alone creates curiosity. Because what stands out is not always what is louder. It is what is different. So the point is simple. Do not compete for attention in places where attention is already cheap. Because the moment you join that pattern, you lose your position. But when you step back and control when and how you engage, your attention becomes rare, and rare attention is what gets noticed. This is where the real difference shows. She wants to see you, but only when it fits her schedule. Last-minute plans, late invitations, changes that require you to adjust everything on your side. Most men don't think twice. They cancel what they had planned, move things around, and make themselves available immediately. That is free attention. It shows that your time has no structure. It shows that your priorities can be dropped without resistance. And once that becomes clear, it changes how she treats your time, because now she knows you will adjust, so she expects it. Another problem is how quickly men give up their plans. Something important comes up, but they still choose her request because they don't want to lose the opportunity. They think saying yes will increase attraction. It doesn't, it lowers respect. Now, understand this clearly. Your time is one of the strongest signals of your value. How you manage it shows what matters to you. If you are always available, it sends a message that nothing else is competing for your attention, and that is not attractive because a man with direction is not always convenient. He has things to do, places to be, and priorities that don't change just because someone wants his time at that moment. Now compare that to a man who controls his availability. If he is busy, he says it directly. I'm not free today. No long explanation, no apology, no attempt to soften it. Just clarity. That changes the dynamic because now your time is not guaranteed. It has to be planned. It has to be respected. And when something has to be respected, it gains value. Another thing that happens is this. She starts adjusting. She starts working around your schedule. She starts making effort to meet you at a time that works because now access to you is not automatic. So the point is simple. Do not rearrange your life to fit every request because the moment you do that consistently, you lose control of your time. But when you hold your structure, your time becomes something she has to work toward. And that is what creates attraction. Everything you've seen so far comes back to one principle. Attention is a currency, and like any currency, its value depends on how it is managed. Most men spend it without thinking. They give time, focus, energy, replies, validation, and presence without any structure. They respond quickly. They engage constantly, and they stay available even when it does not make sense. That is overspending. And when you overspend something, it loses value. Now understand this clearly. If she gets your attention easily, she does not value it deeply. Not because she is trying to disrespect you, but because there is nothing required from her to receive it. There is no effort, no investment, no decision. It is just there. And when something is just there, it becomes normal. Now compare that to controlled attention. When your time is limited, when your responses are intentional, when your presence is not automatic, everything changes. Now she has to notice it. She has to respond to it. She has to engage to keep it. That creates investment. Another thing that happens is this. The more someone invests to get something, the more they value it. That is how human behavior works. If she has to think about you, if she has to reach out, if she has to put in effort to maintain connection, she becomes more attached to the process because she is part of it. Now understand this. This is not about playing games. It is about structure. A man who controls his attention is not trying to manipulate anything. He is simply not giving away what should be earned. He is not reacting out of fear. He is moving based on choice. And that creates a different experience because now your attention is not cheap. It is intentional, and intentional attention is what carries weight. So the point is simple. Stop giving attention like it costs nothing, because the moment you start treating it like something valuable, everything else begins to change. And that is when the dynamic shifts in your favor. Smart men don't cut off attention. They control it. That is the difference most people miss. This is not about ignoring her, acting cold, or pretending you don't care. That kind of behavior creates confusion, not attraction. What actually works is control, knowing when to give attention, how much to give, and when to hold back. Most men move emotionally. If they like her, they show everything immediately. They increase effort, increase communication, increase availability, thinking it will strengthen the connection, but all it does is remove any need for her to invest. Smart men move intentionally. They give attention when it is matched. They engage when there is real energy. They don't force conversations. They don't chase responses. And they don't try to fill every gap with more effort. If something feels one-sided, they step back instead of pushing forward. That creates balance. Another thing they do is protect their time. They don't drop everything for last-minute plans. They don't rearrange their schedule just to be available. They keep their structure and allow her to fit into it, not the other way around. That signals that their life has direction and that their time is not something anyone can access instantly. That builds respect. They also stay consistent in how they move. They don't suddenly become overly available, then disappear, then come back again. Their energy stays steady. Their responses make sense. Their presence feels controlled, not reactive. That removes confusion. Another key point is that they don't try to compete. They don't chase validation on social media. They don't try to stand out by doing what everyone else is doing louder. They stand out by being different, by not reacting the same way, by not following the same pattern. That creates curiosity. So the focus is simple. Be controlled, be intentional, be structured. Because when you move like that, your attention is no longer something she gets automatically. It becomes something she notices. And once she notices it, she starts moving toward it. That is how the dynamic shifts without you forcing anything. Most men are not ignored because they lack effort. They are ignored because they remove their own value. That's the truth. They think doing more will fix everything. More texting, more attention, more availability, more reassurance. They believe if they show enough interest, she will eventually respond the same way. But that approach works against them. Because when you give everything up front, there is nothing left to earn. And when there is nothing left to earn, there is no reason for her to move towards you. Now understand this clearly. Attraction is not built on how much you give. It is built on how much she invests. If she is not investing, there is no connection being built. You are just maintaining her comfort while she stays passive. That is the position most men put themselves in. They carry everything. They lead every conversation. They maintain every interaction. They keep everything alive while she does the minimum. And over time, that becomes the standard. She expects you to do all the work. You expect her to respond and nothing changes. Another mistake is reacting to her behavior instead of controlling your own. If she pulls back, they chase more. If she replies slowly, they respond faster. If she shows less interest, they increase effort. That is a losing pattern because now you are moving based on her, not based on your own structure. And when you move like that, you lose control of the dynamic. Now compare that to a man who understands value. He does not increase effort when there is no return. He does not chase when there is no engagement. He stays consistent in his approach regardless of small changes in her behavior. That keeps his position stable. So the point is simple. If you are constantly being ignored, look at how you are giving attention. Because most of the time, the issue is not that you are doing too little. It is that you are giving too much in the wrong way. And once that changes, everything else follows. At the end of everything, this is what you need to understand. Women don't chase men who give the most attention. They chase men whose attention feels valuable. That is the difference. Most men think attraction is about increasing effort. They believe if they show more interest, give more time, and stay more available, it will create connection. But all it does is remove the very thing that creates it, value. Because when your attention is always there, it becomes normal. When it becomes normal, it gets ignored. And when it gets ignored, you start doing even more to compensate. That is the cycle. Now understand this clearly. You don't need to stop caring. You don't need to become distant. You need to become controlled. Give attention when it is deserved. Engage when it is mutual. Stay present when it makes sense, not every time it is demanded. That is what creates balance. Because once your attention is no longer automatic, it becomes something she has to notice. It becomes something she has to respond to. And when she starts responding, she starts investing. That is when things begin to